that hit me, and I wasn't expecting that because I was just in my own world of skating. Someone says don't look at your phone, and I wondered why, and I look at it and there's these death threats and bullying, and it just brought back like the fact that I got away from bullying and now I'm getting bullied again. And this time it felt worse because it felt like the whole world was doing it, you know. And then to get death threats got so bad that like I didn't want to leave the house in case someone tried to kill me.
Hiya, my name's Elise Christie. I used to be an Olympic athlete. I was a world champion speed skater, and I'm now basically a full-time mum, do a bit of fitness influencing, and I do OnlyFans.
Thank you for that introduction, Elise. This is for the audience who has no idea. This is the second take, and this gives a little bit more insight. So, first of all, a warm welcome to Elise Christie on the Better Than Peter podcast. Elise, you have quite a life story, quite a journey. But right off the bat, I want to start by saying you are a two-time Olympian, and you won the European Championship 10 times in speed skating. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's weird to think about it now. It seems so long ago, but yeah, I was pretty good at it. There was a
I
while
mean,
where the Europeans I was pretty untouchable for sure.
okay. And just curious, did you get into speed skating when you were a kid, or how did you fall into the sport? Because it's not like a household sport in Britain.
No, it definitely isn't. I started as a figure skater, and it was just like kind of because we lived quite close to an ice rink, and it was a bit of fun, and my friends did it. But there was no speed skating there. And you know, even figure skating is not that common in this country. So I did a competition, my first competition, and I won. And I got a selection box as a prize, like a chocolate selection box. So for me, I was like, you didn't get that in figure skating, so that's it. It's taken
So,
over.
so that basically that made the decision that you're going to pursue this sport. How old were you at that time, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I started on the ice at about seven figure skating, and I didn't switch to speed skate. I'd started speed skating probably around 12, 13, and then fully switched at 15.
Okay. And through the ranks, you progressed and you seem to, were you surprised at how good you were? Or is it something where as you were going along, you were training and putting in the hours?
So when I first got invited down to the national team, I was like, I don't get why they're inviting me. So
Oh,
I was like, just seeing it as a hobby. I was really into my education, like intensely. So I was actually going to quit skating and just focus on that. And then they invited me down, and I kind of thought, go try it for a year. But at this point, like Britain weren't very successful in anything, never mind winter sports. So I remember like being on the ice and thinking, we're just rubbish. Why are we so rubbish? Like, what are we doing wrong in Britain? And then obviously, like, we got a bit more successful when the London Olympics happened as a country for the summer sports. But winter sports have always been quite behind. And then I just remember at like 19 years old, kind of being like, this is pointless. Like, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Like, yeah, I'm getting better and I'm training hard, but like I'm not winning, so what's the point in this? So then I had in my mind like it can go one of two ways now. I quit and I go back into education. Or do I find a way to be the best? And like for me it was kind of like um not I've not got the same facilities or ice time as a lot of the top countries. So how can I get better than them without all that stuff? So in my head I was like, wait, I just train harder than them. And that was all that was in my head. And then I did that, but I wasn't sure if it was going to work or not. I remember sitting down with the head coach. We weren't very close before that point. He didn't really speak to me much, and I just remember sitting down with him and kind of opening up about how I felt and what I believed was possible. And his mindset with me completely changed. Then he said, "There's not many athletes he's coached in his time that he's like going with that attitude where they go, I want a meeting, like how are we going to win? And then we sat down and made a plan, and it was like a 8-year plan. And then, my first medal, I couldn't believe it. that I'd got there, but I do remember going on like runs and being in like having shin splints and stuff like that, and just being like, what to win a medal, what to win a medal, and that was all that was in my head. Like I was in agony, but I just kept going and going, and then I realised I could be quite good. I knew I had a natural like technique for it, but I'd say throughout my career I always struggled with feeling like I wasn't quite good enough. And I think partly because of coming from the UK, no one else was really winning medals or anything like that. There was a couple, but not like anyone prolific. So I always like had quite low self-esteem on the ice. So it was literally just physically I was better than everyone else when I was winning because I didn't have the confidence. I didn't have the racing skills that they had because obviously there was no one for me to race back home. So it was literally going out and being the fastest on the ice. And that's kind of how it developed over time.
Yeah. I'm just gonna pause you there for a second because this coincides with a lot of stuff which happened to you on the personal front. And I won't go into too many details, but there was you suffered from depression, there was a sexual assault which happened to you when you were 19. Do you feel that your focus on the ice, or let me ask it this way. Were you more focused on the ice to block out what happened to you off it, or do you feel the low esteem was a carryover from what happened off the ice?
I think it was a bit of both. I was always like I was bullied at school before I left Scotland for England. I was always quite shy and timid. Didn't really stick up for myself, so I was already that kind of person. And then, which no one would believe once I was an athlete. But then, like you said, so much happened. Like I was in a fire. I remember going training the next day. I mean, I left the hostel with smoke inhalation. I had no clothes left. I had to find these clothes that were just like from when I was young. I didn't have anywhere to live. Luckily, my best friend put me up.
So this was
But
when your
yeah, then
house
just
this was when your house was on fire, and then you went to train
yeah,
the next day. You didn't even take a
yeah.
wow.
And I even had smoke inhalation, and I was just like, for me, that's like how my life was up until the age of 30, I would say, is literally everything got put to the side because I wanted to win the medal. So I probably didn't deal with a lot of it. But also, like you say, the effect of it then made me skate faster almost. But it was gradually breaking me as a person over time because I was dealing with nothing. And like you said, I had the sexual assault, which I didn't do anything about, just left it. And then there was just loads of trauma, like throughout the years. And even thinking back now, I just think, well, like, wow, how was I doing that? Because at the end of my career, I couldn't cope anymore.
Yeah.
It did catch up with me,
Yeah.
and I really struggled to push myself. I couldn't find the same fire anymore. And I think if at that point someone had recognised it and put me aside for a year, because a lot of athletes take a year out, not completely, like you still train, but you don't race. I probably could have come back and been fine, but there wasn't that support system in the UK. And I was also suffering with bipolar, which I wasn't aware of at that point. And obviously, late 20s, it kind of gets worse. So I was up and down all the time, like a yo-yo, and I think having bipolar probably partly made me good in the first place because I was able to like be obsessed with skating, like it was everything. I wouldn't even eat a pizza because or drink a can of Coke, which I'm doing right now. Like literally, if I did and then I skated bad, I'd regret it and feel like I've messed that up. I've messed that up. So like I think part of the mental health side, and I think you get a lot of, especially when you hear about good athletes that don't come from an easy background in terms of the support systems in place. And like, it's easy to be good from South Korea and short track because they train them up from, 6 years old and they're racing from that age and this. But I think when you see a lot of athletes that aren't in those kinds of systems that are really good, a lot of them do have mental health problems. And I think a lot of them use the sport to kind of get away from it and focus on something else, and kind of judge yourself on it. Like I was very much so, if I won for the next day, I thought, no, I'm not that bad a person, you know, I'm fine. And then if I lost, it was like a complete opposite. Everything went in a downward spiral.
Yeah. So first of all, again, thank you for opening up and talking about it. And you know, it's extremely courageous of you to be able to speak about it. And I'm sure there must be people, athletes, or even non-athletes listening into this who could probably relate. So you know, it's amazing to me that you reached the pinnacle of success in your sport while dealing with so much stuff off the ice, and maybe, just maybe, I don't know if your bipolar helps you with that. Let's you know, I obviously have no degree to assess that, but I just feel that you were strong enough mentally when you were on the ice that I guess you could channel. So when did you make your first Olympics, or how did you know, what was that a big deal in your mind, or you felt that you were good enough to make it at that time?
So the first one, I was 19. A lot of people aren't actually aware I did three. I'd only been on the team about a year and a half, 2 years, and I didn't even know really what the Olympics was. I wasn't brought up in a sporting background, didn't pay attention to sport. And I remember like everyone on the team making a big deal about the qualifications and stuff like that. And I was just a bit like, well, just going and skating and racing. Then the next thing I knew, I qualified, which I didn't expect to happen. And it wasn't until I really got there that it sunk in what was going on. You know, that this is one of the biggest sporting events in the world. And it's funny when you hear about people like Chris Hoy, he from, you know, a kid was like, I'm going to be an Olympic medalist.
Yeah.
I literally got to 19 years old and really didn't have a clue what I was doing. And then that was when when I had the 4 years leading up to Sochi Olympics, I was like a completely different person. You know, I did become like obsessed with getting to that Olympics and being the best one out there. And
So would you say you were a better athlete in Sochi in your second Olympics compared to the first one?
yeah, completely changed. Like I was always focused. Like I said, I was good in school, so everything I did properly. I've always been, well, I used to be more like that, but I've always been a bit like that. And if I choose to do something and I like it, then I do put everything into it. And I but you know, it wasn't my life. I was an athlete that had a life as well. Whereas then after the first Olympics, it became my life.
Okay.
It was my entire life, and I completely changed. And I know, like, it was a full-time job, 24/7, 7 days a week. If I wasn't on the ice and I wasn't lifting in the gym or whatever, I was sitting there writing about what I could do better, what needs to change, watching videos. Like literally every minute of every day was consumed by being this athlete and being the best at it. And I think a lot of that came down to self-value. Is for once, people thought I was great, like for the first time in my life. And so I'm like, well, if I'm good at this, people think I'm good. You know, I'm a good person. But actually, these people don't even know you. You know, they're just watching you race around in circles. So,
Yeah, I mean, whenever you see somebody on TV, and especially the Olympics, you automatically would be put on a pedestal. As you said, you were 19 the first time, didn't probably even know the gravity of it, but the second time around. But unfortunately, both the Olympics, you didn't medal, and you had controversy in both, but more so in the second one, where you collided with one of the medal hopefuls, a South Korean athlete, and you started receiving death threats, which were quite wild and serious in nature. Do you want to just touch upon that a little bit?
aye, so it was obviously my second and third Olympics that there was a lot of controversy around. But yeah, the first one, now I'd only started medaling in World Cup events about a year and a half before that Olympics. I constantly had this debate with my team that I was a sprinter, but they always said I was a long distance skater. So I was never racing 500s, which is the shortest distance. So my first ever final in a 500 meters was at the Olympics.
Wow.
I had never been in a 500-meter final in my life. I didn't have medals in it. And this, to this day, still annoys me, because if I had been racing 500 meters and it hadn't just been given to another athlete because she was older, then I would have been experienced going into that final. And so, I went off the start line. I was pretty sure I was minimally coming out with a bronze medal, because the girl in lane 4 was not a 500 skater. So I went in pretty confident. And then through my head, I'm like, do I settle for third, just take third? And I'm like, no, that's not me. That's not who I am. So then the first corner, I'm going faster than the girl in front of me, so I go up the inside of her. And to this day, like, there's things that I'll say are my fault. That collision was not my fault. And the way the system is now, where they've actually painted a line down the track on the ice so that you can see if people cross track, but the girl crossed into my lane and took us both down. Now, unfortunately, as we've fallen together, I've clipped one of us. I don't even know which one of us it was. Clips the South Korean girl who's in front, and there's this facade goes on where basically she's a 500 skater. She then didn't show up for a 1500 meters, right? Which I know, because I was speaking to her. She didn't want to do the 1500 because she was saving herself for the 1000 meters, because she's better at the 1000, and wanted a gold medal because she already had Olympic medals. Now, but she couldn't say that to the press, so she told the press she couldn't compete because she was injured. So then, guess what? The whole of South Korea hates me. Yeah. So I get all this abuse, and she feels really bad. She comes up and gives me a hug and that. But I just remember I had doping, did my interviews, came out, went into the Olympic Village, and kind of just sat down with the rest of the team in the lounge area. And I was like, where's my phone? I've not had my phone in hours. And I was obviously distraught because I nearly won an Olympic medal, and I still feel like that should have been my silver medal to this day. But I got my phone off somewhat. I found it somewhere, and someone went, don't look at your phone. So I'm like, why? So then I'm going to look at my phone.
Well, there you go. That's a red flag right there to the bull. Yeah. Okay.
And they're all going, I don't think you should look. I don't think you should look. And I'm like, well, I can't now. So then I'd gone into the Olympics with probably about 2,000 followers on Twitter. And Twitter was new at this point, obviously. It wasn't used heavily. It was only just kind of up and coming. And had no social media training. I didn't really use social media. I just used it to search the news and stuff. And my page had exploded. I was trending, and not in a good way. So I had half the UK saying she's been screwed over here. Probably the ones that knew more about sport. Then I had half the UK ripping into me like I was the worst athlete that ever existed. I shouldn't be at the Olympics. Which I couldn't understand, because I'm like, you're not even at the Olympics. I've just come fourth. I just placed fourth place, and you're giving me abuse for that. You wouldn't have even known me if I came 26th. You would have given you nothing to talk about.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, then I see the Koreans, and they're basically threatening to kill my mum, kill me. And okay, it's easy to sit there and go, that's not going to happen. But it was taken seriously. I had a MI5 guy following me around, watching everything, keeping an eye on Korean fans. It was serious, and it shocked me. And then I had to, carry on competing with all that going on. And I was scared of even going to the ice rink, because just in case someone had a gun in the crowd, which I know sounds ridiculous, but it just wasn't to me. But the thing is, I was still in a bubble. I was still protected. And it got really bad, I think, when I got home from the Olympics, because it carried on for quite a while. And I ended up only leaving my house for training for 6 months. Wouldn't go out the house. I was terrified. Every time I did, I had panic attacks. I obviously came off social media. I just, didn't cope at all. Then started, when I did get back into training and stuff, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's because in a relay event, I don't know, who knows about skating or not, but in a relay, there's a lot more people on the ice at once and you're skating around the middle of people. I couldn't skate relays anymore. So I lost the ability to skate relays because I couldn't be around that many people. And usually, if I did, I had panic attacks and would let my team down and stuff. So I just ended up not being able to skate relays. So it took a long time to try and get over that social anxiety and like the PTSD of it. And what they actually did in the end was the year after, when I was still having so many problems with it, scared of going to Korea because I would get booed and stuff like this. They actually then sent me to Korea on a 6-month training camp because they were like, trust me, when you go there, these people will be your biggest fans. They won't, they're all just idiots sitting behind a computer. When they actually see you, they won't act like that. And I was like, no, that's not, it's going to be awful. And then I got to Korea and people were just stopping me in the street for taking pictures.
Okay.
So, yeah, it was a mental situation. Like, I went in as this naive kid who just started winning medals, thought it was the best thing in the world to coming out of the Olympics, a villain who people wanted to murder. And it was the fact they were threatening my mum and stuff. And I was just like, and it was so annoying because I knew behind the scenes this girl was fine. And she went out to win the gold medal in the 1,000 meters 2 days later.
You
So
probably
it was just,
you probably did her a favor. You saved her legs for, the 1,000 meters. Yeah. But
oh, I
yeah,
know.
it's did you fall out of love after this event happened with the sport? Did you feel a little bit like, or you just felt that you had to deal with the issue and get back on the ice?
I always felt like I had to deal with the issue and get back on the ice and prove myself and whatever else. But I never looked at it the same. It became like a task to prove everyone wrong is the best way to describe it. Like, I didn't go in, and it scared me after that point. Skating scared me, and the capabilities of, well, what it was capable of doing to me and my mental health. So I became quite unsteady on my feet after then, even though nothing changed. It was all mental. And I never fell over or anything, but I always felt unsteady. And then that got worse because then I discovered I had an artery problem in my leg, which would then cause numbness in my foot. So that made me feel even more unsteady. And yeah, I didn't, before it was like a job, I wanted to be the best in the world, but I also loved being away, traveling, the experience of being an athlete, everything about it, pushing myself and all this. But after that point, I didn't, didn't want to travel. I didn't enjoy being there. Like, I'd get to the competition and be like, I was only happy when I won the medal. I wasn't happy in the races up to it. I wasn't happy around that. My whole life was pretty much miserable. And the only time I was briefly happy was if I won a gold medal. Didn't even enjoy coming second anymore. And then that lasted it was more like a relief than happy.
Mm-hmm.
And the relief would last probably about 24 hours, and then it'd be straight back into, right, let's get the job done. And after the second Olympics, no, the third one, but the second bad one, I couldn't get myself back. It just I wasn't able to anymore.
So did you know that you're going to quit the sport, or was it something forced upon you because of injuries, or was it just an accumulation of all the burden, the trauma, the grind?
I had no intention of quitting. I was doing all right the first 2 years up into the games, and then I started. Basically, Nick, I'd worked with him my entire life. They made him redundant. Believed that he was the reason the Olympics had gone so wrong. Gave me a coach that I'd never worked with. Kept getting injured. I had about 3 muscle tears in a year in the same area, and like tendinopathies constantly. So was in agony all the time. just the coach didn't know how to make me a good athlete. He was a South Korean, so he was good with long distance, not short distance skaters. So I had that. Then I managed to eventually fight my case, and he left. And I thought, oh, they'll bring Nick back now because they'll see that the results haven't been the same. And they didn't. They brought another coach. And the other thing, like with losing Nick, is he was very good with my mental health. But, I had these coaches that had no idea how to deal with it. They were quite young coaches. And then I started skating quite well again about a year out of the Olympics. So I thought, I started getting back into my normal times, getting up in the top kind of six. So I thought, right, let's just knuckle down, do what we're good at, train hard, and be able to do this. And then about 6 months before Olympic qualifiers, I lost someone very suddenly in a very traumatic way. And I found it very difficult. But then they took me off the ice for a long period of time, and they wouldn't let me back on the ice. And the only way I knew how to cope with trauma was skate. So there was about an 8-week period leading into the qualifiers to go to the qualifiers, so the British qualifiers. I wasn't allowed to go in the ice rink. And then and they were basically saying I had to be psychiatrically assessed to get back in and all this. And it didn't ever happen. So I ended up just forcing my way back on the ice. I just turned up and went on the ice. And I had 2 weeks on the ice before the British qualifiers for the Olympics, which were a week before we left for the Olympic qualifiers. So I was allowed to skate for 3 weeks leading into the Olympic qualifiers, which is ridiculous. Then I went to the Olympic qualifiers, wasn't skating very good, but was qualified, was doing enough to qualify. And all it was in my head, I've got 6 months after this to just knuckle down and get on with it. I then got taken out and injured the same ankle in the same way I did at the last Olympics. And I remember sitting there in the barrier thinking, no, this is a sign. This has got to be a sign. It's the exact same injury. And we still had 2 more Olympic qualifiers to go, but I knew, I was like, I'm not going to come back from this right now. The only way I'm going to go out and finish my dream is getting this sorted and getting back in 4 years' time. So I knew. So I went to the other qualifiers very well knowing that, you're talking, there was a week between them. So I was skating on a pretty broken ankle. But just went to say goodbye for now. Kind of didn't skate many distances, just tried to enjoy the last trip with people and and the situation. And then obviously the media tried to make out I just didn't qualify and stuff like this, and it was nothing like that. But I was done with the media at this point. I was like, you can leave me alone. But for me, I knew, with the fact I'd injured my ankle and the way my mental health was after everything that had happened, I pretty much knew that there was no way I was winning a medal at that Olympics. So there was no point in going out there to be a competitor. It wasn't what I wanted. So for me, the whole time I'm thinking, right, in 4 years, I'll find my way back and sort it out. But I need to spend this year sorting myself out, because I wasn't over what that traumatic death I'd experienced. I wasn't over the way I'd been treated around it. They sent me to a psychiatrist, and they basically said to me, if you don't pass the psychiatry assessment, we're not even going to send you to the Olympic qualifiers. This was 6 days before we were due to fly out. And I was completely fine. I got assessed and they said, you're dealing with trauma, it's normal. There's nothing that we're concerned about. So yeah, I was pretty angry at a lot of people. I had given my life to the sport, constantly picked the sport up, got it funding, under pressure 24/7, and carried it. And then as soon as things got a bit tough, that's it, bye-bye, whatever, Elise. So then spent a period of time getting myself better. I went into a rehab facility, not for abuse of substance. It was because I was like self-harming and whatever else. So they had a psychotherapist in there. I worked with her. I came out and I was like, right, I'm gonna get back into it. And it wasn't going to be funded, so it was me going to be doing it off my own back. But I couldn't even get a meeting with someone. No one would sit down with me. No one would give me the time of day to even try in the sport, whereas they were taking people in that had never achieved anything. So I gave up, I was like, I mean, I get the last 2 years of my career, I wasn't the most likable athlete by that point, which I think there's a lot of winners you hear aren't, especially when things aren't going well. And I was difficult. I was dealing with a lot. It was all finally coming out. I'm not going to lie and say I was easy by this point, but everybody around me was making decisions based on my career, and I had no control anymore. Whereas before, me and Nick controlled everything, so I was good. We were making the right decisions for me, and that all got taken off me, and everything was going wrong, and no one would listen. And therefore, skating's not going right. So what else is not going to go right? Me, because I've not got my coping mechanism anymore. So yeah, I had a few people in my life trying to fight my corner, and that were really helpful, but the ones kind of that had taken over at the top end just weren't. And I remember even to the point of I brought out a book, and just before it was going to get published, I got all these threats of, this is why the psychiatry thing came up. Well, if you have that in there, then I might have to sue you and stuff like that. So I had to take loads of stuff out. It was just I had good people that were supporting me, that supported me from start to finish, but there was no actual support. Everyone felt like they were just going against me, and I was just done. I was like, do you know what? Like, you don't deserve me. And it's not me, like, you didn't deserve my ability in this sport. And then I did consider swapping countries and going and skating elsewhere, because I did get a few offers, but I didn't think, for me, I was like, I'm not in a well enough place to then get abuse for swapping countries and skating for somewhere else and get loads of abuse over that next. So I was like, it's just not worth it. It's done. I need to take the signs and understand that it's done, and I'll never achieve what I probably deserve, what I went out to achieve. Like, it's just, I have to let it go now and move on with my life.
What's been the lowest point for you? And I'm sure on the personal front there have been several, but was it not being able to medal? Was it the situation when you knew that you're not making a return to the sport? Is there a particular low point where you felt like this is as bad as it gets?
I think it was basically after the 2018 Olympics, so the third one, the second one had gone wrong. I'd been self-harming a lot. I was dating a boy who was Hungarian at the time. He was a skater. He couldn't deal with the self-harming stuff, so he left. And I just felt like at the point I needed people, they were all going, and Nick got made redundant. So I just was like, I don't have anyone. And that, I would say, there's other low points, but that point started the low points. Like, there was a day I went out with my friends, normal day, came back, and I just walked upstairs, was done with life. So, did what I did. And then, like, literally 2 seconds later, snapped out of it and was like, oh crap, I need to go to the hospital. And that was low, because it was just, I just felt like I lost everything in 6 months. and it was very hard to fight back from that. But there's been other low moments, don't get me wrong, but I think that was the start of them, so it sticks out in my head. I think that was the point where it all just came out. Like there was probably 4 or 5 months after the Olympics it didn't, and I tried to stay upbeat, but at that point it just it started coming out.
Okay. And you said, and you have a book out as well where you talk about, you self-harmed as well. You talk about, going to rehab, but now I'm going to change track a little bit. There's quite a lot of the dark stuff. Now we're getting a little bit to your post life.
Yep.
And probably one of the reasons where I first came across your profile.
We've actually paid out over 20 billion to creators since we were founded in 2016. I think the reason why people pay for OnlyFans is because they want to engage with those particular creators. It's because of the ability to customize as well, to ask for specific content. It's also, for some people, it's an ethical decision, actually, about how they choose to consume particularly adult content. In other cases, it's about exclusivity.
I'm not sure if you're aware or not, but just prior to having you as a guest, my last guest was a person who worked for OnlyFans, not the parent company, but as an independent agency. And she used to handle marketing and social media, and it was a very fascinating and interesting chat. And in the chat, I asked her what caused her to quit, and what is the average wage of a person, and so on and so forth. So obviously you do OnlyFans. Tell me about when you made the decision to do it. I know that you were sleeping out of a car and working 3 jobs, and it was really tough. But still, for you to make the jump to OnlyFans, that must have been quite challenging, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it was always something I was very against. And then, because I hadn't planned to finish my career when it finished, and I kind of thought I'd be into the coaching side of the team, and that never happened. And so I was working 3 jobs. I'd lost everything. Like I'd given so much into skating to the point where I lost everything else. So I was, sleeping in my car, working 3 jobs. I literally wasn't living. And I just kept getting all these comments, obviously, all the time going, oh, join OnlyFans and, on Instagram and stuff. And I was like, I don't want to do that. But then eventually I was sitting at home and I was like, I'm so tired. Like, and they were all dead end jobs, and it was just, I was working at Burger King and a stank. It's like,
I read somewhere that you were working at Pizza Hut.
I was doing that too. That was
Oh, wow.
that was one of my early ones. That was better than Burger King, though. I'm not gonna lie. If you're gonna choose between the two, work at Pizza Hut.
Okay.
I got papped by the sun coming out of Pizza Hut, but so I just went on and had a look, and then someone picked up that I joined it, and the next day it was all over the news, and I was like, oh no, this is not what I wanted. I wanted a fake name. All this. And then there were so many subscribers, I think I ended up making a ridiculous amount overnight. But I hadn't actually posted any yet, so these people signed up and there's nothing on there. So I got quite a lot of reviews, and because I think at this point there was hardly any athletes using it. I was one of the first ones.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot more common now.
Which year are we talking?
This was, it must have been 2021, I think. Because, there wasn't loads on it, and, like, anyone that was on it got abuse.
Okay.
So I kind of just used it. I did a few bikini pictures, things like that, and then used it to kind of chat to fans. Then I stopped. Like, it was always on, but I was doing my e-scooter racing, and they didn't want me on it while I was doing that. So I had to stop using it for a while. Which is just, the link to, like, how it's not accepted much in the athlete world. And then I went back on it when I stopped the e-scooter racing. I can't remember exactly when it was. And it just like I gradually started getting these contacts from agencies and things like that. And I didn't promote my OnlyFans anywhere. It was like, okay, the media did a great job of doing it for me. But I didn't ever post about it on Instagram or anything like that. And the agency basically just offer to help promote. You know, they don't really go on my account, because I think there's some agencies that do that, but they don't really go on it. They're just to help me manage more like the social media and like things like this, you know, getting on podcasts and stuff like that. So they don't do loads, but they just help me manage things a bit better, because when you're an athlete, everyone's managing everything for you. But I kind of just gradually switched into accepting that right now that's my job, you know. And I was living on a farm for quite a while last year, like 8 months. So I couldn't get anywhere else. I didn't drive. I was literally isolated on this farm. So that was kind of like the only job you could kind of do. And then, yeah, it's just gradually built over time. But a lot of, like you say, it's different with athletes, because a lot of people just want to speak to you and like find out things about what happens at the Olympics actually and what goes on. So a lot of it's just sitting on a live chatting to them, you know, not doing anything thingy. You can, that's the thing I think that's been, the views being changed on the platform now, is that it isn't like, everyone uses it differently.
Yeah.
And you're in control of what you use it for. And I struggled initially with getting some abuse about not giving them what they wanted, because some men just want that. But I've got used to it now, and I just block, you know, the people that don't respect boundaries or respect what my beliefs are. But it's given me time. That's the way I see it. It taught me to stick up for myself, because all through my skating career I took all this abuse and I hid from it all. And I did that initially with OnlyFans, but actually I now go, yes, I do it, you know. And it did teach me to be empowered and speak for myself and make my own decisions. Because I never got to make a decision in my skating career, really, you know. And I think it did save my life in a way, because I was on such a downward spiral. I had nothing. I was living somewhere I didn't know anyone, in a car. My cat had just died. How sad it is. And I didn't, you know, I was working these jobs I hated. I just was like, how have I gone from this to this? My life was trash, like complete trash. And I think if I hadn't started it off at that point, I was on a downward spiral. Like, I don't know if I'd have survived. And, you know, I don't want to do it forever. Obviously, it's making life simple at the minute, because I can work around looking after my daughter full time. But it's not my long-term goal, but it has been a major thing for me. And it's nice now, because like I said, when I first did it, there wasn't that many athletes on it. Now you see loads of them. And it makes me feel a lot better, because I
A lot
started
of
that
famous
off.
ones as well. So
Yeah.
that's been the interesting part, where you have mainstream athletes. The famous one is a tennis player, Nick Kyrgios. A lot of them are obviously producing content or interacting with their fans, because some of them don't need the money, but you know, they're just adding to the brand profile, and OnlyFans is a smart way for them to go about it. But very quickly, and this is, you know, our podcast is the least preachiest of them all, and we don't have real messages. We are here to convey stories of our guests. But just out of curiosity, if there's an 18-year-old girl out there, again, you know, maybe not graduated, not sure what to do with her life, and then she sees somebody like yourself, what would you tell somebody like that? Would you tell them that, you know, to do OnlyFans, to not do OnlyFans?
No, I tell them they're too young. For me, I can't imagine I've gone on a platform like that at 18. Like, I couldn't have done it at the end of my skating career. It's not as easy as people think, and it's also not a nice world at points. There's a lot of good to it. Like, I've learned how to use it in the right way and use it positively. But an 18-year-old just out of, uni, college, look at the start of their life. They don't need that right now. They've got so many options, so much. Like, I know, like, I could easily say, well, I had options. I didn't. My life was in a mess at that point. I just think as well, like, they were quite, I'm not saying all 18-year-olds like this, but if you look at the majority of them, they will get pushed into doing things they don't want to do. And that's not anything bad on the platform. It's not the place, it's just some people that use it. But if you are going to go on at that age, get yourself an agent to protect you. Because if I now know, like, they taught me about who is a good and isn't a good subscriber, the kind of people to watch out for, the kind of things to look out for, how to use it in a way I want to use it, how to promote in a way I want to use it. Just make sure you're looked after, because like on Instagram, there is vile people out there, and it's no different. But the difference is you're chatting to these people. So, you don't see a lot of stuff you get sent on Instagram because Instagram filters it. There is no filter on OnlyFans. You are sent everything. So, yeah, okay, some 18-year-olds will be able to handle that because, some people are better at handling that. I wasn't good at it, and it took me a long time to get used to it. But I can now say my OnlyFans is only full of really good people because like I said, I've got an agency to help me filter all the bad ones out. So I don't really get that now. It's all quite positive. But if you are going to do it, then don't be afraid of doing it. You just have to believe in yourself and ignore any negative comments you get. There's a lot of jealousy comes along with it. I think there's a lot of people that hate that you're making money doing it because they're not brave enough to. So you kind of have to look at it in that way instead of like you think people are actually hating you. No, they're actually just jealous that they're not able to push themselves out there and do it. But I would say just be careful because it isn't as easy as everyone thinks it is. It isn't as simple as everyone thinks it is. It is a job if you want to do it well. I mean, you can go on there and not make a lot of money and probably be all right. But if you're going to use it properly, then yeah, it isn't just as simple as what people think it is.
Yeah. The average wage for a non-celeb content creator is $180 a month. So this was something which was, and it blew my mind, just because you always hear about, the one thing which pops up is that so-and-so is making millions, so-and-so sold their feet. But usually the people who are doing that are, again, celebs or actors or whoever. And it's very rare, or the odd school teacher or the odd principal or the firefighter, whatever. But the vast majority of the creators, just like you said, it's work. And there's a whole lot of social media aspect to it. There's, creating content. And so it's a little bit where, an 18-year-old may or may not be able to fully grasp the gravity that this is not easy money. And at the end of the day, they're technically an adult, but maybe not completely over here. Anyways, moving on. Elise Christie, what's on the horizon for you? What's the next couple of years looking like?
Well, I've been doing like my personal training, so I'm looking to get into that side. I'm trying to get a speed skating club opened where I'm living at the minute.
Okay.
So yeah, hoping that goes through so that I can start getting back involved in the sport. But actually, my main focus is obviously my daughter, giving her a good life, getting her on the ice. She, like I said, she's really changed my view on life and how I see the world, and that's my main focus. And hopefully, I'm quite interested in zoology and natural sciences, so I'm going to try and get a degree in that. But it's just when I get the time around mommy duty.
Well, it's, congratulations. You're a mom now, and you know, you're balancing everything else in your life, and obviously we talked prior to shooting that, you know, being a mom was not something on your mind, but I'm sure now that you have your kid, it's completely changed your life. So thank you for being on the podcast. Any last words for people watching out there?
No, I'll just say if you are struggling with mental health, then get the help before you end up in a situation like I was in. You can't avoid it forever. And also, like I said, if you're thinking about trying out OnlyFans, then if you feel like you've got the grit in you and the boisterousness to deal with the backlash, then go for it. Like, don't be afraid of it if you feel like you can succeed in it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.